Here Ken Cavalier continues the story of Francis Rattenbury.
He also, as I mentioned, did the third Vancouver hotel, which used to be on the corner of Howe and Georgia as well. He went to work for the Grand Trunk Railway and did a number of the hotels, the destination resort type hotels for that company as well, including one of the ones in I believe Prince Rupert. And as I said, he did the Nelson Courthouse. So he was quite a busy architect for some length of time around the province. Well, his social, or his private life was perhaps a little less successful than his architecture had tended to be. His wife, whom he had married, gave him a couple of children over in Victoria, but the marriage was not a happy one, and as his major commissions dried up, he became somewhat sullen and parsimonious. Eventually, he would run into a young woman who was quite a skillful musician, quite beautiful young lady, some, 28 years his junior or something, who eventually he left his wife for, and finally, after a very long period of time, was able to persuade his wife to grant him a divorce, and then he married this woman. Her name was Alma, and she became Alma Rattenbury. Hoping to be accepted into the social circle in Victoria, Rattenbury and his younger wife were disappointed. So they decided to return to Britain, and they went back to the Bournemouth region, which is where he was to situate himself. And while there, Alma and Francis found that their new marriage was not all that successful either. What ends up happening is that Alma begins looking for a younger man to spend time with, and they had hired a young 19-year-old George Percy Stoner as their chauffeur. Well, as it turns out, Stoner came to feel that Rattenbury was abusing Alma, and wanted to help her solve that problem. And so one night, he informed Alma that, in fact, Rattenbury had rats, as they call them, had been hurt. And when she went downstairs, she found him slumped over in the armchair, his head having been sort of whacked several times with a wooden carpenter's mallet. Well, in a mass panic, they finally got him, called for medical aid, but Rattenbury succumbed to his injuries. And both Alma and George Percy Stoner were in fact arrested, charged with murder. It's an interesting case because the young chauffeur, 19, used what was one of the first defense to cocaines. I really didn't have the criminal intent to kill him. I just didn't realize what I was doing because I was high on coke. It was not much more successful than it would be even today. However, the evidence did not really implicate Alma so much, and so she was acquitted. George was found guilty and sentenced to hang for the murder. And this, of course, left Alma now a widow in a notorious murder, who'd obviously had an affair with her younger, I think she was 28 at the time, he was 19, chauffeur. So she was quite depressed. Apparently walked into a field with a small penknife and stabbed herself I think it was 6 times in the chest with the knife. It has been reported by some that a couple of these pierced her heart. However, it seems that in the autopsy that they determined that she had in fact fallen into the creek by the riverside and drowned Ophelia-like rather than dying from the stab wounds. This then was reported in the press, and it was clear to the British public that she was obviously distraught and feeling guilty over having led the young man astray. And so a petition for commuting George Percy Stoner's death sentence to life imprisonment was started, and that's what happened. Of course, once the war started, the life sentence became something which was shortened yet again, and George Percy Stoner was eventually released from jail. But it became one of the most notorious murder trials of the century in Britain, and is in several books on famous murder trials of the 20th century. However, Rattenbury's legacy in his architecture continues on to this day. His buildings still give much of downtown Victoria their charm, and his entrepreneurial spirit was such that it showed what someone could do if they exaggerated their qualifications in this land of opportunity back in the 1890s.